Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Hummingbird Arcana Podcast. I'm Jo Hummingbird. I'm an Evolutionary Astrologer and an Usui Reiki Master, here to help you deep dive into the worlds of astrology, Reiki, Mysticism, and so much more. And today I wanted to bring you an episode based on my experiences using a astrology technique that is widely popular nowadays and is just growing in popularity as we have pop astrology taking over the internet and so many different crazy transits going on in the collective that people are finally waking up to using this tool to support themselves in their evolution and their journey. AstroCartography is something that I have used for a few years now in understanding my locational astrology, and I'll dive into just a little bit about what astrocartography is. But if you really want to get the expert level understanding of what this is, I'm definitely no expert on astrocartography. I just have used it as a tool in my astrological studies. I'm a professional astrologer. I specialize in natal chart readings. I specialize in synastry and composite reports and zodiacal releasing, but I do not specialize in astrocartography. If I could slow down, this Mercury retrograde back into Scorpio is having me want to cram in all the depth of the information at one time, but just slow it down, bro. If you want to get the expert opinion on astrocartography, the perspectives on that, some great resources, a really good channel that I have been watching for a little while now is Miss Helena Wood's Astrology. She's awesome. She is an absolute expert in locational astrology, relocation, locational space astrology. It is super niche area of astrology that is so deep and so profound and has so many different layers, and I've learned so much from her as a resource and as a teacher. I haven't taken any of her courses yet, but I am looking forward to the day that I get to. But I will link her channel down below in the description box if you're watching on YouTube, or in the show notes if you're listening on a podcast streaming platform. And I will also link down below, I've gotten permission from her to get the astrocartography cheat sheet down there if you want to know a little bit more without breaking the bank and just get a little bit of a freebie there. So without further promoting anybody else's work and promoting my own work, let's just dive into what my experiences with astrocartography are, because this is something that I'm super excited to talk about. And as far as travel and relocating itself, it's not something that I've gotten to do like a gajillion times throughout my life, but I have spent a lot of different long form times in my life in different places affected by different points in my astrocartography chart, which I find to be very interesting, especially when it comes to the way in which this energy can affect you, especially with the different lines, the different planets, like everything. You think there's so much that affects you within your own natal chart, but then you take a look into astrocartography and you're just even more mind blown, because it goes beyond just the story of your life, but then it goes into the story of place, it goes into the story of location and how that can affect you, not just from your natal chart and what your story is associating with these energetic archetypes, but what combinations they have within each other. It's like, it's very similar to the aspects and the angles that we have in our natal chart. If you listen to the Astrology Basics episode, I will also link that down below in the description or in the show notes, depending on, again, where you're watching or streaming. But these planetary combinations you have in your chart, they can be relocated, and that's where you get relocation astrology from. That's where astrocartography bases itself off of, is relocation charts in and of themselves. And every place that you get to go to, every different line that you see in your astrocartography map, you can click on that point, and depending on the software that you're using, you can generate a relocated chart and see what the new story is from a natal chart perspective for you is in that place. And it's very interesting because the places that I've gotten to travel to aren't too far away from what my personal natal chart is. So if you pulled the relocation chart for them, they wouldn't be horribly different. They would just shift around a little bit, maybe like a house or two. But the lines that I've been able to travel to are going to be my Mercury Ascendant line, my Jupiter Descendant line, my Neptune Ascendant, my Sun Ascendant, and my Venus Ascendant. And those are all within probably like 3,000 miles of each other. They're all within the United States, so I haven't really gotten to travel outside of that zone yet, which is something I'm looking forward to doing. I'm currently packing up to get ready for some travels, which is super exciting. But I digress. When it comes to astrocartography, again, those are the places that I've had the most experience with. And if you want to check out your own astrocartography map, you can book a session with Helena. That'd be awesome. Go check out her work, support her. She's amazing. But if you're looking for a free software that you could take a look at your own astrocartography map without having to break the bank or do anything like that or really understand a whole lot, you can just look and see what you're getting into. Astro.com, AstroDance is, the most popular free astrology software that's on the internet. But then astro-seek.com is another great free software. They don't have as interactive of an astrocartography map on their software as astro.com does, which I prefer astro.com if you're looking at free astrocartography, but I digress. Those are going to be two really good free softwares that you can look at your chart and just get a basic understanding of what is going on here. So obviously, like I said, I wasn't going to be diving too terribly deep into astrocartography as a niche area of astrology, as it's not my area of expertise. Again, I'd highly recommend going and checking out Helena's work. Again, her channel link would be down below in the description box. So she has tons of free content and a free podcast called Cosmic Compass, where she dives into astrocartography, and that's the whole basis of that podcast. So I highly recommend going and listening to that and getting some information there. But again, if you listen to the Astrology Basics episode, then you know that the 4 angles in the chart are going to be some of the most pivotal points. They're ruled by the cardinal signs. They're the angular houses, which is, what creates the term angles in astrology. It's, the rising sign, the descendant sign, the Imam Quelli, and the Medium Quelli, which is, the nadir and the zenith. So we have all these different forms of housing to work with when it comes to the relocation chart, and whenever you cross them over with the aspects of the planets and what they make with each other, that is where you get the lines in the astrocartography map itself. And so for me, like I previously mentioned, I've been to my Mercury Ascendant line, which is pretty damn near clear's, great English, bro, close to where I was born. I was going to say near and close at the same time, to where I was born. And I have Mercury on the ascendant by a 4-degree conjunction, so that's not too terribly far off. It's not something that I'm unused to energetically as a soul, so that's a place that I, pretty much feel like myself. Then I've been to my Jupiter descendant line, which I have Jupiter in the 7th house natally, but it is not conjunct my descendant, so this is what I'm talking about with relocation astrology. If you go to these certain places, these certain astrocartography lines, let's say like the Jupiter descendant for you or for me, that is whenever you would take, relocation astrology is a little bit intricate because you're playing around with time and you're playing around with location, but you're taking the same date that you were born, you're putting in a new location, and instead of using the same time that you were born locally to the city you were born, you would take the time that you were born and switch the time zone over to wherever you're going to be relocating the chart to. It's kind of intricate, it's a little bit much to understand if you're not an intermediate to advanced astrologer. So this episode is by no means for my beginners because I'll be talking in a bunch of Greek over and over again. But I've been to my Jupiter descendant line, which relocates my Jupiter right onto my descendant, as the name of that line indicates. And that was a whole experience. That's actually where I went to college for a few minutes and then dropped out. And then I've been, like I also mentioned, to my Sun Ascendant and my Venus Ascendant lines, which I have Venus and the Sun in the 1st house, which they're not conjunct my Ascendant, but again, if you relocate to those points in the map, that's where they become conjunct the Ascendant. And then I've also been to my Neptune Ascendant, which is on the other side of the country, and again, relocating Neptune to the Ascendant, as the name suggests. So I'll share a little bit of insight as to what the experiences are like on each of these lines. This is by no means an expert level of an astrocartographological opinion. Again, I am not an astrocartographer. I am an astrologer. Astrocartography is a branch of astrology. So again, follow Helena Woods for all that juicy information if you want a really good deep dive and expert level explanation of that. But let's start with the Mercury Ascendant line because that's where I am from natally. And, I talk really fast. I talk a lot. I channel a lot of information very quickly. That's very Mercury on the ascendant, and that's very fitting for my natal chart and for where I am geographically right now. But Mercury on the ascendant, this is very, you can get a lot done here. You can be productive. You can create routine for yourself. You know how to express yourself and your thoughts, and you're very in touch with your mindset, whether or not it's a good or bad mindset at the time. It's a very powerful place to be doing like mental health work, but not in the sense of like deep psychological excavations. It's more just, being mutable about your mindset. Mercury is the ruler of Gemini and Virgo. And so, Gemini being a communication sign, a communal sign, things that are related to learning and gathering facts and information and collecting that and sharing it with other people. And then Virgo being about routine and health and taking care of the body and being very diligent and detail oriented, not necessarily good or bad either way. Like it depends on how much of that energy you're working with and how much you're balancing it within an every life. Funnily enough, my Mercury is in Capricorn in my first house, conjunct my rising, and there's mutual reciprocity between the Mercury in Capricorn and where my Saturn is in Gemini in the sixth house of Virgo. So it's very interesting that there's like a double whammy with that mercurial energy in the sixth house going on. And then it mutually reciprocates my Mercury conjunct my rising in my first house. So, and then, this is a separate conversation, but I do have Mars in the third house, which Mars rules the first house where my Mercury is. There's mutual reciprocity there. We could go down a whole tangent there. I could do a whole episode on mutual reciprocity and what that means, but you do understand the basic term of what that means if you took my Astrology Basics Masterclass, or if you listen to the Astrology Basics podcast episode, then you do understand what that means. I'll link both of those down below there as well for you if you want to check that out. If you want to hop into that little digital cohort, that would be awesome. We would love to have you. But I digress, my Mercury Ascendant rant aside. Living here has been a lot of hard work. As much as it's been a place where I can clearly focus and get the details right and really aim at what I'm trying to express and do so with clarity, it has also been something that has required a lot of my energy, a lot of my mental capacity, a lot of my energy, even not even just physical exertion of energy, but my exertion of energy nowadays is thinking myself into a motivational place, or getting myself to ride the wave whenever I feel creatively inspired, whenever my mind is syncing up to my body that way. And it has been a very, very challenging thing. It's also very it puts you in positions where you feel like you have to think light on your feet, not in the sense that you're constantly walking on eggshells all the time, not that you're not. That we could dive into a whole discussion about the Paran lines that go through here, but that's a different conversation for a different day. Check out Helena's work for more information on Parans. But with where I'm at specifically on this Mercury Ascendant line, in between that and my Jupiter Descendant, which will carry into the next point of the conversation later, this has really, forced me to get creative about how I make room in my mind for what it is that I'm trying to achieve, or what it is that I'm trying to express. Or, Mercury is the ruler of writing and is the scribe of astrology. So this is also how, not just what are you writing down in your journal and what are you getting out about your feelings that way? What are you creating? All of my work is digital and online. I'm the one behind my business. I'm behind my graphic design. I'm behind my SEO. I'm behind my Linktree. I'm behind all of my social media content. I'm behind my YouTube and my podcast. I'm the one behind all of that. Mercury in the first house. It's my job to communicate that. It's my job to have the outreach to it, and that mutual reciprocity between Mercury and Mars with my third house and first house. It's my job to express that to the community. It's my job to get that out there. And so it's been pretty taxing to be the only one to do it and to not have 100% of a team all the time. But it, at the same time, is super rewarding because it keeps you in a mental place of somewhat of a passion for discipline, not in the sense that you are in love with always having to be on top of it all, but you get to be the one that makes the decisions based off of what you know is best for you, and you get to set the boundaries and work off of your own routine that integrates that in a healthy way without other people being involved too terribly much to step on your toes. And it's not saying that I'm isolating myself on a Mercury line. That's not a reasonable assumption, but it's very much Mercury also rules stimulus. So there's a necessary time to be involved with your community, and there's a necessary time to be involved with just your own energy. And the Mercury Ascendant line is a very good place to get in touch with that part of yourself where you do understand your own mental capacity or your own limitations, and really navigating how to integrate that in a routine and in a way that supports you and uplifts your community and serves your purpose and your mission, and how you can actually get that out there without it being this whole grandiose, larger than life thing, which it makes it kind of mundane and practical and a little bit monotonous at times, but that doesn't mean that it isn't worth it either. But this dives directly into the next line in the next conversation, which is the Jupiter Descendant line, almost exactly opposite my Mercury, but just a little bit off in my chart. If you think of it by like a 5 or 6 degree orb of separation, I would have Mercury opposite Jupiter, but they're just far enough off of each other that they're not directly opposite, which makes me very happy as an astrologer, because then that would probably make me living where I live even worse than it is. But next, coming up, the Jupiter Descendant line. This is where in the relocation chart, again, Jupiter would be on my descendant. And Jupiter on the descendant is very, very, very dreamy. It is, I could fall in love with how much I love fill in the blank. And I have Jupiter in Cancer, so it's exalted. So whenever I'm in love with something or it like speaks to my soul and it's like outside of me, it's like, oh my gosh. And like I have South Node in Sagittarius in the 12th house, Jupiter sign, Jupiter house. So my soul like would remember that experience, remembers that feeling. So it's likely whenever I go to this line, I meet people who I have past life connections with, or I meet people that are very important in partnerships, legal contracts, even just really, really, really close friendships or people that matter a lot to me. And when I traveled to my Jupiter Descendant line, which is where I went to college at Angelo State University, I met a group of friends that saw me for who I was, really, for the first time, I feel like, ever. And not in the sense that the friends that I already had weren't really close or really appreciated or genuine people. It's just that these people saw me in a different light than my friends from back home did at the time. And they honored the parts of myself that were more Jupiterian, very spiritual, very, ethereal, very beyond the veil and hard to ground and very ambitious and driven, but also focused on higher purpose without the mundane world being what defines me. And, that's very opposite what Mercury energy is. And, Jupiter signs and Mercury signs are opposing each other in the zodiac anyways. Mercury opposes Virgo opposes Pisces and Sagittarius opposes Gemini. They do kind of rule the opposite sides of each other on the same axis. It's just a matter of, these friends were different than my other friends on the other side of the spectrum. It was less mundane and grounded and practical, and it was more spiritual, ethereal, and soul level connection. So I also met someone who I got into like a little situationship with, and that was like one of the first times where I felt truly understood by somebody in that kind of context without it having to be expressed on my end. Mercury, Mercury, Mercury. It was very Jupiter. It was like, I see you, I feel you, I am one with you, even if we're not like together. It wasn't like super existential in that way. It was super casually just intimately connected without having to try. It was just so beyond affable description. So of course it was very Jupiterian. It was larger than life. It was harder to describe. There wasn't a whole lot of communication between the two of us, but there was an understanding between the two of us nonetheless. So that also being able to travel over to like the Alpine area, the Fort Stockton and the Marfa area, like that whole Southwest Texas, like in the like below the Panhandle, is very beautiful, and that's where you get into the mountains of Texas, and it's so gorgeous. And being in that valley range at the time between two mountain ranges was so cosmic. Being able to look up into the stars at night without the pollution of city lights and without being on a college campus surrounded by responsibility. It was like completely disappearing and melting into the earth and into the cosmos and becoming one with the people around me and not really worrying about anything. It was so beautiful and so healing for different reasons. It, albeit short-lived for that chapter of my life, nonetheless, it was very needed. And on that line in college, I remember like the day that I got the download that I needed to come back home and, drop out of college. It was a very Jupiterian experience. It was like I was just sitting there chilling with my friends, and all of a sudden, like, I like put on this crystal necklace that my friend gave me, and I got the download instantaneously. I told everybody around me, they're like, yeah, we support you. Go do it. Like and it was no questions. It was like, there was no need to sit here and come up with a practical list of reasons as to why I was doing was going to work and a 5-year plan and da-da-da-da. It just worked. So I'm very grateful for the experiences I have with the people on that line, and I do still have some connections to at least one person over in that space, and that always will stay very, very near and dear to my heart. So shouts out Matthew if you're listening. Love you, man. Miss you. But moving on to the next few lines that I got to experience very profound experiences on. Take a shot every time I say experiences. But moving into the Sun Ascendant and the Venus Ascendant, because they run so close together, I do have, again, a conjunction here. Surprise, surprise. Sun conjunct Venus by a 4-degree orb. As an astrologer, I do personally consider a 4-degree orb a conjunction. I don't agree with other astrologers who may say that like a 6 or a 7-degree conjunction orb is valid. I personally don't feel that energetically. I feel an orb of influence. I don't feel an orb of conjunction. So a lot of astrologers also only consider dead-on conjunctions and only 1-degree separation conjunct, which that's a little harsh in my opinion, but different conversation, different day. But regardless, from my perspective, I do have Venus and the Sun conjunct by a 4-degree orb because they do very powerfully affect each other. In my chart, there's a lot of mutual reciprocity going on with all that energies as well. So regardless, I digress. I have the Sun Ascendant and Venus Ascendant running through Colorado, and oh my goddess, I could do just a whole podcast episode talking about my experiences in Colorado and how beautiful they were and how profoundly healing they have been for me, the medicine trips that I've had up there, the vision quests, the moments of just connecting with the land and the waters in the mountains up there. Like, that is one of the most healing spaces where I get to go be myself. Again, Venus on the ascendant, Sun on the ascendant, which isn't, again, exactly the case in my natal chart, but if we relocate up to Colorado, it puts them both directly on it. And I could not begin to sit here and be like, okay, yeah, I don't feel anything when I go to Colorado, because ever since the first time I went up there, I had a beautifully profound experience. And there is an episode coming out soon in the Hummingbird Arcana where I talk about my experiences with plant medicine in Colorado. Does play a heavy part into that journey for me. So stay tuned for that episode coming out whenever. I don't know if it's going to be coming out, in the next couple of weeks, whenever the editing is done for that. I have a lot of things that are backlogged and pre-recorded that I'm editing and trying to schedule and get up and running for you guys. So be patient with me, but I will have that out for you soon. But regardless, I digress back into the Venus and the Sun here, with the Sun being the ruler of the self and the ego and the life force energy that shines out, is bright. And then we have Venus, which is harmony and balance and relationships and love and, connecting to the land. It rules Taurus and Libra. It's like connecting to the relationships with other people, but then also Taurus rules the land and the body and the senses. So it's such a beautiful, powerful place for me to reconnect with nature and to tune in to my divine rhythm and get back in touch with what's real for me. And it's just so beautiful and so profound. I at one point I was homeless, living out of my car up in the mountains for about a week or so, and I did so in Colorado. I was like, okay, you know what? I'm not going to be in Texas where it's hot. I'm going to go drive up to Colorado. I don't care. It's beautiful. I will sit in my car and eat a canned corn by itself as my meal for the day if it means I get to be in the mountains of Colorado if I'm in this kind of situation. That's how profound that land is for me. Regardless of my situation when I'm up there, whether I'm staying with family and friends and I'm in a beautiful mountain cottage and an Airbnb up in Lake George and Florissant, which was the first time I went, or, one of the more recent times, like I mentioned, when I was living out of a car. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, I've had the full range of experiences there, the duality of the Venusian goddess energy, and I don't care. It's so beautiful. It is so, you can't describe it, because the amount of experiences I've had up there, I can't pinpoint to one sentence or one sentiment or one idea. You just have to experience that for yourself. So if you ever get the chance to travel to a Venus Ascendant line or a Sun Ascendant line, please do. I highly recommend it. Again, disclaimer though, everybody's Venus Ascendant line or Sun Ascendant or Mercury Ascendant, Jupiter Descendant, everybody's lines are going to be different based off of the energies you're working with your natal chart. That's why, again, relocation astrology is what this is based off of. So look at the relocated chart before you go there. I'm just sharing my experiences and my thoughts and my opinions based off of my own astrocartography map and what I've been able to do in my lifetime But back to Colorado, I've been there probably 7 or 8 times in a matter of, 3 years. It was insane. And that is probably a place that, if the US was safer right now, I would be headed to uh, permanently, but we are not there, so I am making other plans, but I digress. The 11-mile canyon reserve in Lake George is where I've actually had the peak of most of those beautiful experiences. Like, yeah, I've had great downloads whenever I've just been in the land there in general, wherever I am, whether it's again at the Airbnb or staying at a family member's apartment or living out of my car, regardless of what was there. Um, it was just always so divinely guided and beautiful and made me feel so grounded and like regardless of the situation I was going through, it felt healing. Regardless of any adversity I would be facing at the time, it would feel healing and nourishing and regenerative for me. um, the most divine example I can think of that would probably be um, the time that I went up there with my best friend at the end of May in 2023, I want to say. Either the end or the beginning of May, I can't remember, but it was definitely May of 2023 for sure. And um, we went up there and we went to a dispensary, when in Rome, you just do what you do. And we got something called a Jupiter J, which is very, very high concentrated THC. And we were just like, okay, cool. They're having a sale on these and they're pushing these out. Cool. Sounds fun. Uh, Jupiter energy is something that my best friend has a really powerful focus on in her chart. So she was more called to that than I was. But I, being the astrology nerd, was like, oh, yeah, that sounds good. Definitely get it. And so then we went up to the 11-mile reserve and we partook in that medicine. We connected with the land. We made a ceremony. I do mention a lot more of this in the plant medicine episode. So whenever that comes out, I'll have that link back here on this episode when it comes out for in case you're listening to this before or after that. But regardless, that um, experience really got us both so deeply in touch with the land and the waters in the mountains and our spirits. Again, it was like a very cleansing, healing, regenerative, nourishing, healing time for the both of us to have in the mountains. Ooh, 28 on the recording time confirmation. But I'm going to digress a little bit further away from Colorado now because I'm getting lost in the Venusian beauty of it all. But let's talk about something that's a little more humane and a little more not even grounded, because this is Neptune that we're going to be talking about, but something a little not as beautiful, but was as beautifully deceptive as Colorado. Now let's go all the way over, halfway across the country, if not a little bit more, to Southeast Florida, which is where my Neptune Ascendant line runs through. And I had such a beautiful relationship with Florida in the beginning, but the more I go, the more deceptive and the more destructive it becomes, which is exactly Neptune energy. Sadly, that is my Neptune Ascendant line, which there is and always will be forever this beautiful rose tinted glasses kind of energy that pervades all of Florida for me. It's definitely something that I will miss partaking in, but at the same time, it's best if I don't. I I don't even know how to begin talking about all the experiences I had in Florida. A lot of it was like super aesthetically pleasing with like the beach and the ocean and the palm trees and the really divine Neptunian ethereal energy there. But Neptune does also rule deception and trickery, not just the way that like Mercury is trickster energy, where it's like playing games. It's okay, straight up lies and straight up manipulation and pulling out of rugs underneath you with the Neptunian influence, especially when it comes on the rising, because it's the Mars ruled angular energy. So it's not like, Lunarian, it's not Venusian, and it's not Saturnian where it's restrictive. It's Martian where it's like conflict. It's a little more in your face with the ascendant energy. So, like, for just the context, so you understand what I'm talking about, like, we basically, me and my best friend, we were invited to stay with a couple of our former friends who had a lot of money, and we did not know at the time, but come to find out they were anti-rump supporters. And that I do not condone whatsoever. That's not the point of this podcast. We're not going to get into any of that right now. But I digress. Like, it just, there's a lot of fallout. There's a lot of drama. There was a lot of lying, and there's a lot of just petty behavior that I wish I would have seen the signs of sooner, but Neptune deceived all of us. So, I'm just going to move on from South Florida, period. As much as I wanted to love that place and tried desperately to get down there because of the beauty of the land and connecting with the ocean and trying to anchor in the spiritual energy around the places that were thriving there, it just was not the time or the place or the right thing for me. So I needed to move on for sure. And there was also a situationship that was there, but it ended up just being another toxic karmic manifestation of something that I had already put the lid on. And it was just like another reminder from beyond the etheric veils, because Neptune rules the 12th house, which is the house of hidden enemies and karmic cycles and previous baggage from other incarnations and, past life connections as well, which I already have my South Node in the 12th house in Sagittarius, which 12th house is traditionally ruled by Jupiter anyway, and Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter. So, of course, that just double whammies me, and I have Pluto in Sagittarius in the 12th house natally. Like, it's a whole shebang. So, it's best for me to just stay clear of South Florida, and Florida in particular, because that's just where the Neptune Ascendant Line runs through for me. But more specifically down near West Palm Beach and Jupiter and Fort Lauderdale and Miami and the Keys, like I definitely cannot be over there. Just, I had a near-death experience there. I had trust taken away from me there. I have been deceived there despite all the beauty of the situations. And it has forced me to get real about boundaries and setting them and holding them, not just saying that they're there and then letting people walk over them anyway because I love them. Like, it really taught me a lot about how to do that. Excuse my kitty cat meowing in the background. She wants to be a part of this too. So that sums up the few experiences I've had on my astrocartography lines, because I haven't been anywhere else in the US other than those places. Not that I haven't been to anywhere other than those states, but the other states that I have been to run specifically through all the lines that I've mentioned. So it would kind of be redundant to talk about those experiences if they're pretty much the similar energy to what I've already discussed here. But those are my experiences. If any of them resonated, or you have similar experiences, or if you've been to some of the same lines that I've been to, or if you haven't and you just are curious about astrocartography, head over to Helena's channel. Again, that will be linked all down below in the description. And if you wanted to, you can also check out her free astrocartography cheat sheet. That will be linked down below as well if you want to pull up your astrocartography map and learn more about it without having to watch hours and hours and hours of content, even though her content is very educational and very expert level and very on point and super, super helpful. It has helped me and so many other people really learn about this niche area of astrology, and I'm very, very grateful to have that as a tool under my belt. So yeah, I thank you guys so much for taking the time to listen to this episode today. If any of it resonated with you, go ahead and give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel on YouTube if you're watching, and turn on the post notification bell. But if you're not watching on YouTube and you're listening on a podcast stream platform, then go ahead, if you feel called or if you want to, go ahead and leave this podcast a 5-star review. It really helps me out, pushes me into the algorithm, and just share below with me your thoughts underneath that review and let me know other episode topics you want me to talk about, or anything that resonated with you in particular, or if it didn't resonate at all and you want to hear something else, let me know. I'd love to engage with you. And again, thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen. I will see you in the next episode. Many blessings and take care.